Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Landry. I'm a professor of anthropology and religious studies and the co-director of TIS, along with my colleague, Madeline. And we're very happy to introduce to you Kyrah Daniels this evening. On a personal note, it's really nice to be able to introduce somebody who I respect so much, and her work is so incredible that it really encourages us to think about these really rich intersections that you'll be hearing about today. So I'm really excited to be able to introduce you to Dr. Kyrah Malika Daniels is an assistant professor of African American Studies at Emory University. She completed her BA in African and African American Studies from Stanford University and earned her MA in religion and her PhD in African and African American Studies at Harvard University. Professor Daniels teaches courses on Africana religions and art history, material culture and museum studies, and race, religion, and representation. Her research centers on African heritage studies, African heritage religions, sacred arts, religious initiation and conversion, and ritual healing traditions in the Black Atlantic. For the 2019-2020 academic year, she was awarded a Getty ACLS postdoctoral fellowship in the history of art. Daniels' first book, Art of the Healing Gods, Illness, Imbalance, and Sacred Arts of the Black Atlantic, is a comparative religion project that examines ritual art traditions and religious healing legacies of Congo-derived communities in Haiti and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The book investigates how sacred art objects mediate relationships between humans and spirits in healing ceremonies to holistically treat spiritual illness and imbalance. Daniels' work has been published in the Journal of Africana Religions, Meriden's Feminism, Race, and Transnationalism, the Journal of Haitian Studies, and the Journal for the American Academy of Religion. Between 2009 and 2010, Daniels served as a junior curator at the Smithsonian Institute's National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. Following the earthquake of 2010, she worked in Saint Raphael, Haiti with the La Coupe Soleil Academic and Cultural Arts Center, a grassroots organization that develops art-based pedagogy. At her previous institution of Boston College, she held the first appointment dedicated to African religious heritage traditions, as well as the first appointment in African and African diaspora art history. Daniels currently serves as a member of the board of directors for the Haitian Art Society, the Leadership Council for the African and Diasporic Religious Studies Association, and is vice president for COSAMBA, the Scholarly Association for the Study of Haitian Vodou. Thank you very much, and please join me in welcoming Dr. Kyrah Daniels.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Oh, I think we can do better than that. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, thank you. Allow me to first extend my sincere appreciation for the opportunity to come and share my work today for the 2024 Shirley G. Wassong Memorial Lecture. I acknowledge that here in Hartford, we stand on unceded land and territory of Indigenous First Nations, the Podunks, Poquannox, Massacos, Tunchis, Wagonks, and Saukyogs. As a descendant of the African diaspora, I salute you. And we pour libations in honor of all of those who have transitioned. M'abdi honneur, respect. Special thanks to Dr. Timothy Landry and Dr. Madeline Spezialetti, co-directors of the Trinity Institute for Interdisciplinary Studies, for extending this gracious invitation. I'd also like to thank all the staff, especially Kate McGlue and Megan Fitzsimmons, who arranged my travel and lodging and have made my visit as fruitful as possible. It is a pleasure to join you all here today on this momentous occasion of a solar eclipse. I take this as a sign. I'm wearing my Sagittarius stockings in honor of this. And Trinity College, I must say, has special meaning for us as members of the Vodou studies community and the Vodou spiritual community, as the institution where Professor Emeritus Dr. Leslie Demangle, our first Haitian researcher trained as a religion scholar of Vodou, held an esteemed position for many decades. Mwen dogwe devant quand yon gros mapou nan communauté COSAMBA. Merci en pile pour tout travail ou fait pour Haïti et pour Vodou. To all of you, I salute you and say, honneur. That is a Haitian call and response that indicates honor, and the response is respect. So you can say honneur, that's what I would say, and you reply respect. So let's do that together. Honneur? Respect. Beautiful. My lecture today stems from a developing research project which investigates artistic representations of disaster and trauma in Haiti, and the Vodou spirits who offer guidance and support in times of crisis. The project builds upon research from my first book, Art of the Healing Gods, Illness, Imbalance, and Sacred Arts of the Black Atlantic, a comparative religion project that examines ritual art traditions and religious healing legacies in Haiti and the Democratic Republic of Congo. I've conducted research for the past 15 years in Haiti and the Haitian diaspora of the United States, primarily in the cities of Mirebalais and Jacmel. Now, I have to admit, I've never encountered a setup in which I couldn't massage the screen, so pretend that I'm massaging the screen. But for those of you who know, I conduct research in Jacmel in the south and in Mirebalais, which is in central Haiti. My book, Art of the Healing Gods, currently under review, investigates how sacred art objects mediate relationships between humans and spirits in healing ceremonies to treat spiritual illness and imbalance holistically. Situated at the intersection of Black Atlantic religion and art history, my research employs an interdisciplinary approach, weaving together the fields of sacred arts, ethnography of ritual healing, and Africana religious studies. In today's lecture, I analyze several Haitian paintings and ritual flags to examine how sacred artworks depict the Haitian Loa, or spirits, in cosmic battles as they fight to protect the lives and livelihoods of their devotee children. I've chosen two quotes to frame my talk today. The first one is by the late esteemed historian of religion, Charles H. Long, who states, through the worship and religious life of Blacks have often been referred to as forms of escapism, one must always remember that there has always been an integral relationship between the hardness of life and the ecstasy of religious worship. The second is a Haitian proverb, "Wayo pap jam lage pitit yo." The Loa, the spirits, will never abandon their children. Aye, bobo. The work before us paints a scene of violence in a lush, paradisal landscape. Standing on a blue veranda, a couple holds each other fearfully, silently witnessing acts of devastation that they will be expected not to discuss publicly, but to never forget. Eddie Jacques' La campagne anti-superstitieuse, 1940-1942, renders a historical portrayal of Haiti's brutal era of the anti-superstition campaigns between 1940 and 1942, during which Vodou devotees were persecuted by the state and the church. Here we see destruction spill over from homes and temples into the public courtyard and sacred community of the Lakou. Civilians are ordered by military officers in khaki suits to gather ritual objects in a heaping pile that will become a bonfire of the spirit's mystic implements. In the center appear split calabashes, shattered gourds, jettisoned mystic pots, and spirit clothing. A young man gently disposes of an enormous broken kanari, mystic pot, mourning the dead who will no longer be honored in vibrant funerary rituals. Occupying the largest portion of the painting is an arresting scene in the center. A Vodou peristyle, or temple, with a corrugated tin roof and pink walls is being ransacked by state officials. A Vodouisan devotee carries a punctured drum over his shoulder. Its surface may have been perforated by an angered military officer, or, in more sinister fashion, a devotee may have been forced to slice open the mouth of this talking drum. An elder in blue pants sits dejectedly in front of the temple, perhaps the head Ngan priest who hoped this day of decimation would never come. A fellow Mambo priestess stands behind him with her hand covering her face in distress. Together, in blue and red, they appear as Ogu and Elzuli Dantor, two of Haiti's fiercest warrior spirits. Military officers trickle out, and several initiates in white flee the temple grounds to safety. On the far right, a few precious officers stand before a reposoir, a sacred tree where spirits reside, identifying ritual goods to be confiscated. One brave officer climbs the gnarled tree trunk to seize a makut, a ritual straw sack for the agricultural spirit Cousin Zaka. We hope that the ritual sacks further high up in the tree's boughs will escape their notice. Another officer attempts to pull a wooden cross out of the soil, desecrating the humble community cemetery. A scrawny black dog resembling the Egyptian god of the dead, Anubis, barks his fervent protest. Overseeing the entire scene of ruin next to the temple is the chief military officer and 2 silent Catholic priests beside him. For them, a jealous God forbids idolatry. So whether the victims of this violence are complete strangers or family members, God offers no mercy for blasphemers. Upon closer inspection at the bottom of the rubbish pile of ritual implements, a crumpled Haitian flag becomes visible, signaling that the rejection of Vodou is a rejection of Haitian identity at its core. Today, as I write this, dozens, if not hundreds, of loots and raids are taking place across Haiti. The paramilitary gangs are not targeting Vodou communities per se for now, though some Vodou artists have had their artisan workshops raided and destroyed for retaliation between warring gangs. My own family has recently experienced such devastating rupture. My cousin's husband is the descendant in a long line of coffee producers. So the coffee company Selecto has undergone many changes of leadership, but recently it's landed in the hands of an impassioned young leader who has proudly taken up the charge with hopes of revitalizing Haiti's global coffee industry. Since the first insurrections of this tumultuous epoch of Haitian history in July 2018, the Port-au-Prince-based coffee company has maintained a certain degree of protection from paramilitary gangs, as Selecto employs dozens of young women who were gang members' sisters and wives. As such, a thin veil of security was offered to the coffee company, which was lauded, or at least tolerated, for providing local jobs. Over the past several weeks in Haiti, however, much has happened to disrupt this fragile stability. 4,000 prisoners were broken out of jail. The Prime Minister Ariel Henry was pressured to step down from office, and under the contested leadership of former police officer Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, paramilitary gangs have declared themselves the new lawless face of governance. In this current state of affairs, this thin veil of protection for Selecto has been commandeered. Usually, paramilitary gangs ransack private homes and businesses, taking whatever goods of value can be resold legally or on the black market. What they cannot carry with them, they have typically burned. At this stage, we are simply praying that the gangs will spare the workers' lives and decide not to return. It is during these such incidents of violence and upheaval when devotees began to question their faith and ask, where are the spirits? Where is God in times of crisis? In Haitian Vodou, a proverb answers this query with force. The spirits are here and ready to pull up their sleeves. In essence, the spirits are ready to perform work, gathering arms to protect their spiritual children at all costs. Within artistic depictions of historical trauma and major upheaval, the Haitian Vodou spirits are often portrayed fighting valiantly and offering healing to protect their human children. I identify this marvel as a Haitian religious history of spirit interventions. To be clear, such an understanding that the spirits intercede on behalf of their spiritual children or devotees is not uniquely a Haitian phenomenon. Religious communities all over the world beseech their God or spirits in times of calamity. Devotees in distress call upon the divine through prayer, offerings, and ceremony, among other propitiations. But what is remarkable is Haitian sacred artists' consistent depictions of catastrophic scenes with the Haitian spirits standing by ready to wage war, offer protection, enact rescue, and administer healing to their spiritual children in need. In this Africana religion and art historical study, I examined 4 periods of historical difficulty in Haiti to examine the role of Vodou spirits as depicted in sacred art portrayals, portraying scenes of atrocity. I begin with an investigation of spirits of war. During the Revolutionary War for Independence between 1791 and 1804, the Loi, or the spirits Ogu and Erzuli d'Antor, waged war alongside Haitian soldiers and helped secure victory over the French to become the first Black republic in the Americas. 2, spirits of protection. Vodou experienced its greatest state-sanctioned persecution in the late 19th century and early 20th century. During the U.S. Marine occupation between 1915 and 1934, and the anti-superstition campaigns between 1940 and 1942, the Loa witnessed their temple destruction and beckoned devotees into nature, reminding them that spirits were first worshipped in grottos, mountains, and rivers that could not be destroyed. 3, spirits of rescue. Following the catastrophic Haitian earthquakes of 2010 and 2021, the Loa rescued survivors from beneath the rubble and transported lost souls to the spiritual homeland of Afrique Guinée. And finally, spirits of healing. In the devastating era of the current era of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Loa have tirelessly worked to combat the coronavirus and save their devotees from untimely death through miraculous rites of healing. Drawing from an Africana religious studies and sacred arts analysis of paintings and ritual flags known as drapeaux, this lecture examines historical periods of upheaval and contemporary atrocities as conveyed in Haitian Vodou sacred art traditions to investigate where are the spirits in times of need. Spirits of war. In most instances, the Haitian Revolution. In most instances, people will agree that revolutions are not born overnight, but sometimes they are. True, countless insurrections predated the onset of the Haitian Revolution. Historical narratives of François Macandal describe him as a Haitian Maroon of Congolese origin who poisoned plantation wells in the 1750s, long before the revolution broke out. But it is also true that one specific night served as the catalyst for the 13-year Haitian War for Independence that would follow. On August 14th, 1791, a political congress and religious gathering was held in the sacred grove of Bois-Caïma. Despite competing interests and allegiances, enslaved citizens and Maroons who had created their own autonomous societies banded together and pledged an oath to each other and their spirits to fight for freedom until the death. As religion scholar Leslie Desmangles has argued, Vodou cosmology was, quote, inclusive in that it incorporated African beliefs and practices from diverse geographical areas represented by the various ethnic societies in each republic, end quote. Each hailing from different African ethno-religious regions, Haitians of the new republic established a pan-African political system and a multi-ethnic pantheon of African spirits. 1 week after Bois-Caïma, on August 22nd, 1791, Africans launched an organized rebellion that established the first Black sovereign state in the Americas and rendered Haiti a beacon of Pan-African freedom. Several historical figures played especially prominent roles in the Haitian Revolution. Epic myths recount how Dati Boukman, a Muslim from Senegambia who was captured and enslaved in Jamaica before arriving in Haiti, led a religious ceremony alongside Mambo Cécile Fatima, frequently identified as a Creole priestess. As legend has it, alongside Mambo Cécile Fatima, As legend has it, Mambo Cécile was ritually mounted by the warrior goddess Shirley, who rode a black pig, her sacred animal, and swore a blood pact with her devotee children. In artist Ulrich Jean-Pierre's exquisite portrait here, we see that Boukman carries an asson, a ritual rattle of the priesthood, and beseeches the spirits above. He wears red and blue and brandishes a machete in his left hand, a clear allusion to Ogu, the martial spirit of justice. Our presiding priestess, Mambo Cécile, sits astride a large pig with Danto's signature dagger in her left hand and a blazing torch in one hand, invoking a subset of fierce Vodou spirits known as La Flambeau, signaling their fiery dispositions and warrior energy. There are only a dozen well-known portraits of the Bois-Caïma ceremony, but let me just say that they pretty much all follow the same sort of visual script. You will see Dati Boukman, you will see Mambo Cécile Fatima, you will see the black pig, you will see this congregation of people gathering together to fight for freedom, and usually there'll be some allusion to a parting in the heavens, celestial interventions, and some presence of the spirits. The Vodou spirits played an active role in the rebellion. Artists signal the spirits' presence both subtly and more overtly. The most frequently cited Vodou spirits of the Haitian Revolution are the warrior spirits Ogu and Elzuli Danto, who fought alongside Haitian freedom fighters. Ogu has many manifestations: the bloodthirsty soldier on the front lines and the wise, calculating general who oversees all. Papa Ogu is a true patriarch. He is everyone's father, complete with stern reproaches and an unmatched protective instinct. He courageously safeguards his devotee children from danger and does not hesitate to draw blood if needed. Elzri Dantor, Loi of motherhood, lesbians, and fierce warriors, is often portrayed as Mater Salvatoris, the Black Madonna, known in Poland as Our Lady of Czestochowa, with scars on her cheeks. Now, as the story goes, she disguised herself as a man to fight in the revolution. And when the soldiers discovered her, it's unclear whether it's the French or the Haitian, they sliced out her tongue for fear that she would betray them to the other side. And so when she comes in ceremony, she does not speak an intelligible language, but rather clicks a silent phantom tongue. A fearless warrior and fierce mother of her devotee children, a lover and justice seeker, Dantor's love knows no bounds. For these reasons, Elzri Dantor and Ogou are regarded by Vauduisans as Haiti's spiritual parents. What is peculiar, then, is how few artistic representations there are of the two of them having fought during the revolution itself. This beautiful, yet simply rendered drapeau or ritual flag by Wonal Edmond portrays their common Catholic depictions as St. George slaying the dragon on the right and Dantor as Mater Salvatoris holding her crowned child. Other styles of artists, including fashion designers, have worked to render this epic myth in portraiture photography. Groupe Minoquin, a popular Instagram account, reimagines the Haitian Loi in fashionable dress and sumptuous regalia. Here, Ogou is portrayed as a regally dressed warrior king, and Elzri Dantor wears flowing robes in her signature colors of red, blue, and green. A gem-studded golden orb on the floor marks a symbol of nationhood and power, reminding us of the sovereignty that Ogou and Dantor fought for so valiantly. While Ogou stares ahead at impending danger, Dantor gazes straight at the viewer, holding our attention and imploring that we fight for Haiti's freedom and its birth as a nation. Other works portray the legendary birth of the Haitian flag, with accompanying spirits who bear witness to this act of nation-building. Artist Madsen Montpremier presents an otherworldly scene of this monumental flag creation in his painting, Dessalines ripping the white from the flag. Here I'm going to note that for those of you who are familiar, Laurent Dubois' book cover for Avengers of the New World features this painting. So the story goes that in 1803, shortly before Haiti gained its independence from France, Emperor Dessalines, who would become the first emperor of Haiti, took the French flag, which has white, red, and blue, and sliced out the white, which is a very obvious symbolic representation of removing white colonial power, and had his goddaughter, Catherine Flon, sew the remaining fabric pieces of red and blue together to create a new national flag. In Montpremier's work, a legion of proud soldiers emerges from the forested mountains on the left, wearing cobalt blue army coats. Most wear French-style hats and carry bayonets, though some soldiers wear protective boots, while others are barefooted, reminding us of the hardships of combative war. The soon-to-be Emperor Jean-Jacques Dessalines takes a noble stance in a maroon coat with gold-fringed tassels. He is portrayed larger than most of the soldiers to signal his highly regarded stature. An elder sits on the floor at Dessalines' feet with a long white beard. And here I want to point out he carries an asson, the mark of the priesthood, in one hand. A makout, a ritual sack, is on the floor. I would argue that this is perhaps Ogou Baragri, the divine general of justice, or Papa Dambala, creator of humans, who is bearing witness to the creation of a new black nation. The patriarch sits before a hearth of 3 stones, recalling renowned historian Michel Rolfe-Trouillot's Ti du feu boulet, stirring the pot of Haitian history. A tree of liberty has been gendered female with descending breasts like ripe fruit. Recalling trees' role as reposoirs, or spirit residences, this divine feminine tree emerges as the serpent rainbow Aïda Wedo in the rainbow-colored trunk. Here on the right sits goddaughter Catherine Flon, crowned in a towering gold head wrap and flouncy white skirt. Beside her is a large cooking pot with a simmering soup joumou, squash scoop, on the hearth to feed hungry troops. With care and precision, Flon sews together the red and blue fabric pieces to fashion a new flag and national sensibility. It takes careful observation to perceive spirit presence in Montpremier's painting, but in fact, the Loire filled the landscape, or shall I say skyscape, assisting their revolutionary children in this time of war. Catherine Flon stitches the flag together, but a figure behind her right shoulder carries the trailing red fabric. Holding up the red cloth is a 3-headed woman representing Marassa, the twin spirit or triplet spirit of children and new hope. This spirit's multiplicity of being also embodies time travel in the painting. 2 of her 3 heads watch Dessalines ripping the flag in the past, while the 3rd head stares beyond front directly at the viewer, breaking the 4th wall and looking to Haiti's new future. Following the women's gaze toward Dessalines, we realize that while the general holds the red fabric and slices the French flag to remove the white strip, a winged angel holds the blue band aloft in the sky. This alerts us to the fact that the sky is populated with winged, white-robed spirits. Some Loa carry trumpets for clarion calls to freedom, and others hold swords to partake in battle, while still others rip their own flags in the sky. Flying fish carry colored pieces of cloth, small scraps of red and blue fabric in their mouths as divine affirmation of the Republic's new flag. Recalling that Afrique Guinée, Vodou's African spirit realm, is situated underwater and thus a mirror reflection of the mortal world, we understand that the invisible spirits of an aquatic celestial realm would echo rebellious freedom fighters' actions here on earth. As above, so below, and as below, so above. Ultimately, this majestic work makes clear that the spirits, the invisible ones, never left our side during the Haitian Revolution. In fact, these spirits of war were instrumental in our victory. Spirits of protection, the anti-superstition campaigns. Continuing along our historical trajectory, we leave the foundational years of nation building in the early 19th century. Following the revolution, the Catholic Church recalled all clergy members who remained alive in Haiti and refused to send European parishioners to the new Black Republic between 1804 and 1860. In 1860, the Vatican negotiated a concordat so that European priests could be sent back to Haiti. This means that for 55 years, Haitians were entirely responsible for their own formal religious development. Catholic clergy in the new republic would have been either African-born, especially of Congo origin, or of recent African descent. African indigenous religions continue to blend and transform, eventually becoming the tradition known as Vodou today, a national religion of the people. Tragically, however, Vodou underwent persecution not simply under French colonialism, but under Haitian rule as well. In 1835, the Haitian Penal Code was enacted, during which time Articles 405, 406, and 407 prohibited Haitians from practicing the sortilège, or spells. Under rising anti-Vodou sentiments, the Haitian state and the Catholic Church reinforced these violent penal codes several times during Haitian history. One, shortly after the Concordat was established with the Catholic Church in 1864, and again between 1896 and 1900, Vodou was attacked by lawmakers, state officers, and the Catholic Church. Two, again during the U.S. occupation between 1915 and 1934, Vodou experienced serious repression under American neo-colonial armed forces. And three, following the Marine occupation, Vodou was scrutinized and came under fire yet again with the anti-superstition campaigns of 1940 to 1942. I opened this lecture with an analysis of Eddie Jacques' La Campagne Anti-Superstitieuse, which offers a chilling portrait of this violent period in the early 1940s. Other artists, such as renowned painter André Piel, created similar works to document the devastation Vodou communities experienced. And here I'm going to point out, you see many of the same themes that were featured in the first painting: ransacked temple, objects placed in the center for a bonfire, people weeping and moaning and crying out in despair. But one thing that I do want to point out that's distinct about this particular portrait is that you have two military officers on the far right who are leaving with spiritual booty under each arm, ritual flags, mystic bottles, divine drums, and more. Piel's work thus highlights an especially pernicious element of African diaspora religious history, as numerous spiritual implements forcibly taken from Africana religious temples in Haiti, Cuba, and beyond were not destroyed, but ended up as folkloric artifacts in state museums or sold abroad in the illicit sacred art market. What unifies Jacques and Piel's paintings in the spirits is the spirit's notable absence, but this does not characterize all portrayals of this violent historical era. Another painting takes us back in time about 15 years to another era of Vodou persecution under the U.S. Marine occupation. Campagne Anti-Superstitieuse en 1927, anti-superstition campaign of 1927 by Ernst Prophète, includes many of the same scenes of Vodou communities' destruction. An orange-colored temple burns in the far distance up top, and the road leads ahead to unspeakable violence. Haitian state officials in blue denim arrest and beat practitioners, while North American or European Catholic priests brandish wooden crucifixes and pray to exorcise devotees of devilish spirits. A police officer prods forward a woman wearing a red blouse and multicolored skirt who carries a mystic pot, and a few steps away, another officer raises his arm against a devotee in a checkered shirt, holding a ritual rattle that signals his role in the priesthood. Along with other Vaudouisans carrying divine drums, ritual sacks, and blessed swords, these religious elders are being ordered to dispose of sacred objects in burning pyres. Relatedly, the earliest examples of Haitian ritual flags that have survived today are from the late 1930s and 1940s, largely due to this destruction of sacred arts during the anti-Vodou superstition campaigns. Though the scene portrayed here is unquestionably bleak, a few hidden gestures of Vodou resistance signal the spirit's presence. The lois appear camouflaged in the natural landscape. A male devotee in the upper left dejectedly places a divine drum and ritual rattle into the burning flames at the tree's base. He must have uttered a prayer for strength, because Papa Dambala appears in serpentine form, winding down the tree trunk to protect his spiritual children from greater harm. Seeing a divine serpent at the exact moment of relinquishing his precious mystic goods, the spirit would likely whisper, "Prends courage, kembe la foi, mbab jam lageo." Have courage, maintain your faith. I will never abandon you. At the bottom of the painting, a man kneels, feigning obeisance, in red and black, and he has his back to a tree with a skull and crossbones over its trunk. It may be that physical bones are indeed affixed to the tree, or perhaps this floating mirage signals that the reposoir, the sacred residence, is home to Gédé, spirit of life, death, and rebirth. This presence of Dambala and Gédé reminds us that especially in times of crisis and religious persecution, the spirits emerge to protect their children, even in silent gestures of solidarity. It is precisely this staunch spiritual support that inspires mortals to become religious freedom fighters. And here I'll note that in his article in Sacred Arts of Haitian Vodou, Robert Ferris Thompson quotes artist André Pierre, noting that la pénitence is a form of resistance, so that the clothing being worn by the devotees is a way of calling the spirit's attention for help. André Pierre states, "You can be ruined, but you can change things by wearing these rad pénitence. You put these special garments on to protect from evil and to attract good things," end quote. And lastly, I want to point out in the bottom right corner, a female devotee in a blue dress flees out of the frame with a sacred staff in hand, intent to save at least one precious spiritual implement and the ancestral tradition from devastation. She may be fleeing to another temple compound to warn them of the impending danger of raids, or perhaps stealing away into the mountains, as did so many Maroons, to secure their livelihood. Either way, Pophet's deliberate inclusion of a devotee stealthily moving out of the painting's frame implies that the anti-superstition campaigns failed in quelling this ancestral African tradition as intended. Spirits of rescue, earthquakes, and the aftermath. Historical dates that harbor travesty are not easily forgotten. 4:53 p.m. on January 12th, 2010 is a moment in time that Haitians will always painstakingly remember. It was the day that the earth trembled. Let's see if I can go back. Yeah, okay. It was the day that the earth trembled and quaked and razed the capital of Port-au-Prince to the ground. The 7.0 earthquake left 250,000 people killed, 300,000 people injured, and displaced as many as 5 million people, 1/3 of the country's population. The late televangelist Pat Robertson blamed Haitian Vaudouisans' supposed pact with the devil, referring to the Bois Caïman ceremony and oath made to the spirits as revolutionary Haitians fought for their freedom, as the reason for this natural disaster. Adding insult to injury, he referred to the earthquake as a blessing in disguise for Haiti. Of course, this Afrophobic sentiment of religious racism, and I'm happy to talk about those terms more in the Q&A, overlooks the blatant geographical reality that Haiti lies between two huge tectonic plates of the Earth's crusts, the North American plate and the Caribbean plate. Further, Haiti is situated between two active fault lines, the Ngriquillo fault line and the Septime-Triennial fault. In the powerful documentary Fatal Assistance, Haitian filmmaker Raoul Peck argues that despite public international outpouring of support in 2010, Haiti received alarmingly little foreign aid for rebuilding efforts, including the egregious financial irresponsibility of the U.S. Cross. As Elizabeth McAllister, Haitian studies scholar, has importantly pointed out, global disaster relief efforts for Haiti were a disaster unto themselves. She explains how U.S.-American telethons featuring celebrity acts championed change through charity donations but failed to heed the overhead costs for so many foreign aid agencies. Survivors describe the earthquake's aftermath as complete chaos, witnessing the destruction of political emblems like National Palace and the obliteration of religious institutions like Haiti's beloved Catholic Notre Dame Church. While many foreign aid workers remained stuck on airport tarmacs or held up by bureaucratic red tape, Haitians spent days and weeks rescuing loved ones and themselves from the rubble. Particularly inspiring was the work of everyday citizens, including both trained healthcare workers as well as improvised local rescue teams. As in many historical instances of national atrocity, artists were among some of the first responders. Painters, drapeau, or ritual flag makers, and the occasional metal worker have all crafted artwork that depict the Earth's devastation and its seemingly endless aftershocks. I have found the earthquake representations in drapeau especially compelling. Indeed, remarkable drapeau depictions of the 2010 earthquake and the Spirit's rescue have been produced in an exquisite beaded detail by Miolan Constant, Evelyne Alcide, Rudy Azor, as featured here, and Ronald Edmond. And here I want to point out that you'll see that this is a figure who's representing a bishop who's coming out of a crumbling church. And that really indicates that no religious leader even was safe from this devastation. It was an experience that affected everyone. I'd like to invite you all to join me in this visual art analysis. What do you see here? Please feel free to raise your hand. I'm breaking the fourth wall. What do you see here? Please.
So you see the angelic figure?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's right. That's right. There are some angels in this top portion. Wonderful. What else?
They're interesting angels. One looks like a mermaid, the other has the body of a serpent.
That's right. That's right. One looks like a mermaid. That would be La Sirène, queen mermaid of the seas. And the serpent would probably be Aida Wedo, the serpent, the rainbow serpent. What else? Yes, please, Colin.
Bottom left side, it looks to me, I can't see very well, but it looks to me like Angel's Bebe.
Yes, excellent. So there are two sacred symbols here for different divine feminine spirits. One, just as Colin said, is the Veve, the sacred symbol for El Girantor, our Black Madonna, whom we saw earlier. And if you go diagonally upwards, you'll see that there's another Veve that's a heart, which is the sacred symbol for El Girifreda. What else do you see? They're tombstones. And it's important that they are above ground. This is something that you see in a lot of Francophone parts of the African diaspora, so you'll see it also in New Orleans. These above ground tombstones are very typical in regions that experienced flooding. So that's one of the reasons that they would be created in concrete, really tombs above ground. And I'll point out, I imagine many of you are also seeing this as we're speaking, the details of the carnage. Bodies are being carried to graves. These are mass graves, which is something that the Haitian state had to sanction because there were so many people and so many bodies being recovered, and not everyone could come and have a private ceremony. So these scenes of devastation really bring a great deal of insight into what people's lived realities were. It also raised a challenging question, which was what shall be done with all of the dead, these scores of newly initiated ancestors? Hundreds of thousands of bodies went missing, never to be recovered. Rescue teams might encounter dismembered limbs before they found cadavers, if at all. Other bodies appeared defiantly from the rubble, and too often went unnamed or unclaimed by family members who could not come identify their loved ones due to any number of infrastructural problems in the wake of incessant aftershocks. And yet, despite the annihilation, the spirits have not abandoned their children. In another exquisite work by Alcide, we encounter a scene of interfaith collaboration as Haitian Vodou spirits and Catholic saints fly into the frame to recuperate their precious children. The work is powerfully titled The Angels' First Aid During the Earthquake, Les Anges Secourisme lors du séisme. The work also includes a battalion of spirits offering aid in the scene of tragedy. And I'll mention here that we see Dambala in what looks like bishop's garb in green. That's often how he is depicted, almost like St. Patrick himself. You'll see Dato and Ogu as warriors up in the top who are rescuing survivors from the carnage, from the wreckage. We see once again both the serpent spirit, Aida Wedo, and the mermaid queen of the seas with her iridescent, shiny pink scales. And then we also see on the far left top corner, Bawon Samzi and Gun Brigitte, whom we'll see more of as we close out, who are spirits of the dead who have turned upside down to save people from the wreckage. Now here, we must acknowledge the atrocity caused by Haiti's second major earthquake in just over a decade. On August 14, 2021, 11 years after the 2010 earthquake, and exactly 230 years after the Bois Caïman ceremony that preceded the War for Independence, Haiti's earth split open again. Seismologists identified the earthquake between the southern cities of Les Cayes and Jérémie as a 7.2 magnitude. Now, recall here that Port-au-Prince's earthquake on January 12, 2010 was 7.0 magnitude. However, these numbers cannot begin to render the heart-wrenching reality of 2,250 and 250,000 people's lives lost respectively in 2021 and 2010. With so many loved ones missing, communities have been devastated in Haiti, the Haitian diaspora, and far beyond. When faced with such horrific natural disasters as raging floods, wildfires, hurricanes, tornadoes, and earthquakes, religious communities band together in acts of rescue and recuperation. These works reveal that mortals do not engage in these natural disaster rescue efforts alone. This brings us to our last ritual flag depicting the Loire's rescue during the earthquake. The question is, which earthquake? Mixed media artist Ronald Edmond has become well known for his Bizango God, ritual guardians, and Vodou drapeau, ritual flags. Here I want to point out that Ronald Edmond has become a good friend and collaborator. He is a survivor of the 2010 earthquake. He spent weeks recovering in a hospital from a crushed leg. And I asked him whether he had ever portrayed the earthquake. And he said, I've tried so many times, but I just don't have the heart. I don't have the courage to do so. And in 2021, after the second earthquake in less than 10 years, or just over 10 years, he recommitted to doing so. And funded by the Chicago Field Museum, he was able to manifest this magnificent work that I'm about to show you. As skilled ritual flag artists, he and his artisanal team typically can complete flags within days, weeks, or months. But it took him over a decade to actuate a ritual flag portrait of the 2010 earthquake as he imagined and experienced it. Haiti's recent major earthquake of 2021 encouraged Edmond to return to this earlier work, and today this earthquake flag gains relevance anew. His work depicts a harrowing scene of chaos and destruction. I'll note that there are several faces of people that seem blank, as if to suggest they are unnamed, but still remembered. Others have a fixed gaze. Foreign aid intervention is visible from the large UN helicopter overhead. This is something that's missing in the others. But on the ground, Edmond renders the real frontline workers of 2010, Haitian civilians and local aid workers, including a pair of civilians who transport an injured woman to safety. The drapeau also renders a sophisticated trompe-l'œil effect with a skewed perspectival landscape of the earth. The earth is unevenly rendered and threatens to swallow the city and its citizens whole. Port-au-Prince metropolis has become a necropolis, but the Vodou spirits have not forgotten their children. And I'll mention the presence here of Yaouzou Nator, Aida Wedo, and Brave Guédé. We see two urban temple doors open at the top right. This is a reminder that while radicalized evangelicals accused Vodou devotees of having caused the earthquake themselves, which of course is ludicrous, Vodouisans kept their temple doors open. They held mass funerals to pray for the unburied dead, regardless of their religious orientation. A large mystic eye inspired from Freemason iconography emerges next to cumulus clouds, signaling that Bon Dieu, or Olohum, the creator God, bears witness to all devastation. Spirits of healing, our last section, the coronavirus. 4 years ago, between January and March 2020, the world shut down due to a deadly infectious disease. First diagnosed in Wuhan, China, scientists identified the disease as the coronavirus. COVID-19 received its name as Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, coronavirus 2, and because the first major outbreaks occurred in late 2019, though it took another 4 to 6 months for the rest of the world to recognize the severity of the respiratory disease. Within the first 6 months, the pandemic had infected millions of people, and the global death toll swiftly rose to more than 500,000 people. According to the World Health Organization, the cumulative number of reported deaths in the U.S. caused by COVID since 2020 has risen to 1.2 million people, while the global death toll exceeds that of 7 million. Though Haiti's coronavirus pales in comparison to other regions such as Brazil, India, and of course the U.S., Haiti was still ravaged by the infectious disease. Confirmed deaths number fewer than 1,000 people, but as many as 35,000 COVID-19 cases were diagnosed between 2020 and 2023. As with previous infectious diseases in Haiti, such as HIV/AIDS in the 1980s and the cholera epidemic of the 2010s, COVID was brought to Haiti largely by tourists and foreign workers. And like many of their West African counterparts in Senegal and the Democratic Republic of Congo, Haitian healthcare workers began public outreach campaigns to educate people about how the virus was transmitted and how to protect oneself with vigilant hand washing and mask wearing. I must remark here that Ronald Edmond is the first Haitian artist I know who began creating sacred art portraits as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Edmond has created a magnificent collection of ritual flags depicting the spirits valiantly fighting the coronavirus, which I refer to as Loai Sienyoa Bataille Corona. The Haitian spirits fight the coronavirus. I love these. I think this is so brilliant. Here, the spirits of the dead combat larger-than-life representations of the coronavirus, entering a martial dance of epic proportions. The healer warriors portrayed here include the Guédé and Bawon pantheon, sibling spirits of life, death, and sexuality. We encounter the Vodou Loa here in their role as magnanimous spirits of healing. And I'll note here that this is surprising to many people. Many people who are familiar with Vodou are familiar with certain spirits like Papa Dambala or Papa Loco and Mambo Aizan as master herbalists, Papa Simbi as a magic maker, Gamboa as a root worker. It's difficult for Westerners to understand how spirits of death can offer healing, but as arbiters of death, life, and rebirth, the Guédé and Bawon spirit families are some of Vodou's most powerful spirit healers. In this pair of 2020 portraits, Edmond depicts the Guédé and Bawon healing spirits hard at work in the cemetery. Left is Guédé Docteur Covid, Guédé the doctor of COVID, and right is Bawon la Croix, Docteur Covid, Baron of the Cross, doctor of COVID. I'll note some specific things that differ between the two. On the left-hand side, you'll see the figure has a mortar and pestle in hand for medicines. He has a ritual sack on his shoulder. There are bones beneath his feet. He's wearing sunglasses to see into the invisible realm. On the right-hand side, you'll see that there's a kwakwa, a ritual rattle in his hand. There are offerings for the ancestors at the base of his feet. Both of them have a staff in their hand of a cross. Both of them have jugs of clairin, which is moonshine, Haitian moonshine or rum steeped with hot peppers behind them. Both of them are wearing masks to protect themselves and loved one, and both of them are stomping on COVID. Their respective healing implements reveal that yap travail pour client yo et yap fait traitement pour patient yo. They are conducting ritual work for clients and making healing treatments for patients in need. Edmond identifies these Guédé and Bawon figures as COVID-19 doctors, who must be hailed as newly inducted spirits of the Vodou pantheon. Scholars of Vodun and Benin, such as Suzanne Blier and Timothy Landry, explain how the Dahomian Vodun Sakpata, who governed over the earth, disease, and healing, also developed the power to cure pestilence and smallpox, a contagious virus that devastated global communities in the 1600s to the 1800s. In the 21st century, a new Haitian law is needed in the face of the devastating coronavirus pandemic. And who else could battle the virus with as much grace as the great healers and adjudicators of life, death, and rebirth, the Guédé and Bawon spirits? In these Corona flags, the spirits of death reveal themselves as warrior healers, combating mortal diseases with mystic powers and great aplomb. Haiti's Guédé and Bawon spirits thus emerge not as fearsome grim reapers, but rather as fearless protectors of their Haitian children. In this drapeau, a divine couple propitiates the dead during the height of the COVID era. The work features portraits of the Queen of the Dead, Gon Brigitte, on the left, and Lord of the Dead, Bawon Samedi, on the right. And I'll point out that they have wearing masks, they're both wearing sunglasses, there are skulls like lanterns in the work, they have the cross staffs, and they're making offerings with candles and flowers. The Toulois are conscientiously masked and pieds nus, barefooted in supplication to the earth and expectation for all Vaudouisans in ceremony. I would title this work, Mo royalio ab saluez ancêtres en période COVID. The royal dead salute the ancestors in the time of COVID. Here we bear witness to the Guédé and Bawon spirits' healer warrior status as they fight to keep their COVID-positive children alive. But we also see them in a state of vulnerability, as they propitiate and pay homage to the victims whom they could not save, whose lives were extinguished before their time. These three works, Guédé, Dr. Covid, Baron Lacroix, Dr. Covid, and the Royal Dead, thus embody prime examples of what comparative religion scholar Kimberly Patton refers to as divine reflexivity. Indeed, if the Guédé and Baron spirits have prepared ancestral foodstuffs, light candles, present flowers, and bow their heads in prayer, to whom are the Vodou spirits presenting these ritual offerings? The answer must be to the entire spiritual nation of Guédé and Baron and Afrique Guinée, the realm of ancestors in mythic Africa. The spirits' humble offerings plead with the newly initiated living dead who died in the pandemic, asking them to protect their surviving descendants and beseeching them for grace in a time of calamity. Here, the drapeau's bright blue border invokes a different divine frequency. We see the signature coronaviruses now familiar to us, but the flag features a scene that mirrors the lived reality of battling COVID. Here I'll point out there's an ambulance, two figures who are carrying a stretcher, and we otherwise might understand this as a secular scene, except for Baron Samedi, the winged figure with cross and offerings. With black and orange wings, Baron recalls an angel of life and death. He waves his cross baton over the patient, praying for his recovery so that he might not become the newest citizen of the afterlife. Believe it or not, I've saved the best for last. Vodou's Gada spirits are well known for their powers of healing and protection. Here, Edmond depicts them in fervent mystic work to offer their spiritual children treatment and defense against COVID-19. Our satin border is green for medicinal plants and healing. A sky blue background signals renewed hope. Our capable spirits wear masks to protect themselves in battle, and there are more coronaviruses present in this flag than others, 7 in total. The viruses are multicolored yet equally menacing. Here are our mystic healer warriors of the earth and sky. Papa Dambala and Mambo Aida Wedu. As before, Papa Dambala appears as a bishop with a mitre and priestly robe. He carries a black candle and an orange and black staff with a whip to beat back the coronavirus. Somehow, this typically gentle-natured Dambala looks different. His colors are white and green, sometimes yellow for Papa Loko. But here, aside from the bishop's hat, these colors are absent. How to explain these darker regalia colors? I would argue this is Dambala la flambeau, of the flaming torch, a fiery Peto manifestation of the healer spirit. The Gada Dambala is a powerful, sweet-natured healer. Dambala la flambeau of the Peto order plays no games and takes no prisoners. His healing testaments are swift acting, and he assaults all harm doers. To the right is his wife, magnanimous rainbow serpent Aida Wedu, with her coiling serpent tail in white, green, orange, yellow, and blue. The Amazonian warrior is bare-breasted, and her flowing locks trail behind her in the wind as if she is propelling herself through the sky for battle. Mambo Aida carries 2 ritual rattles in her hands, one asson to salute the cool, even-tempered Gada spirits, and one kwakwa for the hot, ferocious Peto spirits. For this cosmic battle with COVID-19, she enlists the help of all 21 spiritual nations. This drapeau thus portrays an interfaith couple, a Catholic or Catholic-appearing husband and a Vaudouisan wife, uniting forces for a shared cause. As powerful healers, they shield their spiritual children from the deadly infectious disease. As mystic warriors, they will not cease until COVID has been triumphantly defeated and every devotee is spared from monstrous malady. To conclude, in many ways, it is easy to maintain one's religious devotion when life is sweet. When money flows steadily, family health is in order, love abounds, and good fortune appears consistent, it is understandable that one might feel divinely blessed. On the other hand, this can also lead to spiritual laziness. Hubris settles quite comfortably onto mortal souls, and people forget the need for propitiation and expression of gratitude to the spirits for the blessings bestowed upon them. It requires far more tenacity to maintain one's faith in the wake of traumatic experiences and earth-shattering upheaval. I selected these 4 periods of Haitian history across 4 centuries: the war for independence between 1791 and 1804, the anti-superstition campaigns of the 1880s, 1930s, and 1940s, the 2 major earthquakes of 2010 and 2021, and the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 to the present, because they emblematize larger motifs of human struggle. During times of war, persecution, natural disaster, and life-threatening illness, the road may appear impossible to trod. And yet, Within faith communities, it is precisely these periods of strife when devotees are encouraged to renew their religious commitment to the divine, praying ever more fervently for peace, safety, refuge, and healing. Such times of atrocity are not for the faint of heart. In times of war, families are separated. Soldiers and civilians may go missing or have their lives brutally terminated. Captives are under constant attack, and warriors may lose sight of the grander mission when besieged by carnage. During eras of persecution, people must exercise hypervigilance to protect oneself. Bonds of trust are broken as betrayal becomes a new order. Constant surveillance can lead to madness, and the impending threat of violence can be as terrifying as the actual assault itself. In the horrifying wake of natural disasters, especially those caused by climate change, such as rising tides, swelling floods, raging fires, and powerful earthquakes, survivors may lose precious loved ones and all earthly belongings. Refugees are hardly a new phenomenon, but today's refugees have become displaced not simply by war and famine, but also by environmental devastation. In periods of global health insecurity and deadly pandemics, infected patients may become bedridden, hospitalized for life-threatening symptoms, incur insurmountable financial debt for treatment, and may never fully recover from debilitating conditions like long-term COVID. It should go without saying that, of course, the most sobering consequence of any such atrocity, war, persecution, natural disaster, and deadly disease, is death, the termination of life. How do humans persevere in such adversity? During these instances, people may experience a crisis of faith, or alternately hold even tighter to their conviction in a higher power. As survivors, they are likely to pose questions of themselves and their religious healers. How do we process and make sense of this trauma? Who is to blame for this travesty, be it war, persecution, natural disaster, or deadly disease? Was this spiritual consequence or divine punishment for something that we have done wrong? Why does God or the spirits allow such horrific atrocities to occur time and time again? In the fields of theology and religion, these are known as questions of theodicy, or efforts to determine the problem of evil. These are understandable queries and usually do not have simple answers to satisfy grieving communities. Further, the compounded effects of multiple traumas can reactivate survivors' post-traumatic stress and deepen the wounds of already painful scar tissue. And yet, these are also opportunities when people band together to mourn their losses, comfort one another, and express solidarity in times of crisis. In Haitian Vodou, devotees explain that the spirits serve essential roles to provide strength and fortitude to their mortal children. So to return to our earlier question, where are the spirits in times of crisis? They are here and ready to perform spiritual work. I close with this moving portrait, I promise I'm closing, by Camille Rameau. Les dieux se penchent sur le destin d'Haïti. The gods reflect on Haiti's destiny. In Haiti, we certainly could use this congregation and spirit gathering more than ever. Far in the distance, we see Papa Ogu at Saint-Jacques riding his stallion into the congregation ahead as he was summoned to protect his children. In the painting center, Cousin Zaka, our agricultural spirit, stands tall next to a tree in denim. A makout is slung over his shoulder with magical implements of the earth. Indeed, he is often invoked as the spirit of travail, work. Seated next to him in queenly fashion is Maîtresse Shirley, our Black Madonna in royal attire with babe in arms, a symbol of the future. Holding court in the center is Papa Dambala, wise elder patriarch ready to deploy his serpent staff of healing. Maîtresse Shirley Freda, loi of love and good fortune, is seated with a pierced heart, weeping holy tears for all of the injustices in the world. And on the far right, we encounter Bawon Samedi himself, Lord of death, life, and fittingly, regeneration. They sit before a Veve, sacred earth drawing, for all 401 spirits and 21 spirit nations, known as Milokan. Sacred art practice offers one ritual method to reinvigorate the balance of the universe. These artistic works all demonstrate the ways in which Loyal Pap Shamlage Pitichu. The Haitian spirits will never abandon their children. In the Vodou art scenes we have encountered here, depicting historical traumas and contemporary atrocities, we are ultimately reminded of the precarity of life, the inevitability of death, and the endurance of Haitian spirits who will do anything to protect their precious mortal children in times of need. Merci en pile. Thank you so much.
I think it's on, yep. Alors, merci un pile. How are you all doing? So we're gonna have some time for question and answer. I'm gonna start with one question, and then I believe Kate has a microphone if for you guys to ask questions. Kyrah, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about why do you think art is such a powerful place to have these sorts of discussions?
It's on, right? Okay. Why do I think art is such a powerful place in which to have these conversations? Because art is accessible to everyone who has the ability to see. So I remember, I'm very moved by those who do research like the amazing Régine Jean-Charles on, literature, which is such a powerful and long-standing art form. And also, in Haiti, there are complications. There are complications of language and accessibility. You have a population that is not at all monolingual, but that has varying degrees of proficiency in French. And much of Haitian literature has been historically written in French. So if you have a population that is 100% fluent, proficient in Creole, but only a minority of books available are in fact, the primary language, the mother tongue of Haitians, that means that the accessibility of these works is much more limited. And so I think art is so powerful. I think visual work is so powerful because anybody who is not visually impaired can engage with it. And particularly with works like Drapeau, even those who are visually impaired can feel the work. And so it moves us in the way that all art moves us, whether that's the written word, whether that's spoken poetry, whether that's, visual works. It moves us, it stirs something in us, and it requires us to reflect. It allows us an opportunity to see something that we might recognize in the world around us, or requires us to think about what it is we're seeing that we feel we've never encountered before.
Do you think the art is changing the loi in some ways?
Do I think the art is changing the
You think
loi?
it's going back and forth? You think there's like a
yeah.
symbiotic thing happening where the loi are changing the art, but in some ways the art is also changing the loi?
Marvelous question. Absolutely. And you really see that with Haitian Drapeau in particular. So the story of Haitian Drapeau is quite fascinating. You have various lineages coming from European military banners and West African ritual flags that are brought together into this colony of Saint-Domingue, which becomes Haiti. And at first, drapeau, these ritual flags were just fabric sewn together, very much like the flag that Catherine Flon sews together, just fabric. And then people started riffing on it. They started improvising on it. So they included beads and sequins. And at first they were really sparsely included. But in the 1950s and 1960s, you start seeing a shift where many more sequins are included. And then in the 1980s, an incredible Haitian flag maker named Yolande Constant was working as a humble factory employee for wedding dresses. She was laid off from her job during a period of political difficulty, and she said, well, how can I continue to use this skill set that I have in another sector? And so she learned to start making flags. And she started incorporating some of the fine beading techniques that she had done in wedding dresses into flag making. This is an example of mortals changing things, right? But I would say that there's another argument that can be made for the spirits changing things. So Robert Ferris Thompson, the late art historian, the late great art historian of Black Atlantic Sacred Arts, was somebody who really encouraged us to understand that the sequins in Haitian flags, and you could see it especially with like the mermaid scales, were what he referred to as flash of the spirit. That reflection, that capturing of light is something that attracts spirit energy. It's why so many peoples in West Africa, Central Africa, the African diaspora include mirrors or fragments of glass on graveyards. If you see broken pottery or broken dishes on African American graveyards, it's the same concept, this idea that that which is broken in this world can be made whole in the spiritual realm. And so I think that there's another way in which we could say, the flash of the spirits with sequins was powerful, and Yolande Constant bringing in fine seed beading means that a level of intricacy and detail could render the spirits an even fuller complexity. And so I do think that there is a speaking between, especially because a lot of artists will describe that they're not, they'll say things like, oh, I'm not initiated, I don't really know a lot about Vodou. And I asked this example, for instance, with Ronald Edmond, who did the amazing coronavirus pieces. And I said, well, how did you come up with this idea? He said, oh, it came to me in a dream. The spirits told me to do it. said, oh, but you're not formally initiated, right? So this is so powerful, right? Because the spirits have an opportunity to engage in direct conversation with humans and can, in fact, influence the ways that they are rendered. So definitely, it's a back and forth.
And of course, in West Africa, beads can often be spirits themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll stop asking questions, though. Does anybody else have any questions?
Oh, Professeur Demange.
I'm really fascinated by Edmond's painting. As you know, Gede, a lot of the spirits have different manifestations, like Ezuli, can be Ezuli Freda, and so others. And Gede also has many manifestations. What I'm interested to know is whether now there is a new Gede that has been created, a new manifestation called Dr. Pandemic that you mentioned, and we saw him on the painting. And whether, in fact, where did that come from? I mean, did the painting itself, did the artists themselves were the one who introduced it? Or what is the source of Dr. Pandemic?
That's a wonderful question. In this particular instance, I have not heard of somebody speak about Gede Dr. COVID. I believe this is his vision. I believe that this is the artist's vision. But I think that a lot of Vaudouisans would agree that if there is to be a new spirit associated with COVID, that it would definitely be a Gede, because there was so much death surrounding those who were battling COVID, those who are battling long-form COVID. And so I think it's very logical that this would be the next sort of member of the Vodou pantheon. But as far as I know, he is the artist who has rendered this spirit the first time. Thank you for the question.
I just want to follow up with what Leslie was saying. Has there been any discussions with the post-earthquake mass graves, right? And I'm thinking of the idea that the first man buried in a cemetery becomes baron, right? Do they talk about the idea that that there may be a baron or a Brigitte of these mass graves that were dug during the earthquake?
That's really such an important component, and thank you for mentioning that. So something that Dr. Landry is referring to here is that traditionally speaking in Haitian cemeteries, it's understood that the first man who is buried in the cemetery becomes the Baron Samedi of the community. And the first woman who is buried there becomes the Grande Brigitte of that cemetery. And so in that regard, the first two people who are buried in the cemetery become really spiritual ambassadors between the realm of the living and the realm of the dead. And, I think that tragically there was far too little spiritual caretaking that occurred during the earthquake and immediately afterwards. I mean, mass burial is not ideal. That's not how people should be prepared for the next life. A lot of times, those who were buried had no names, had no faces, were not claimed by their loved ones. And I really do want to point out here the importance of recognizing a generosity of spirit in Vodou communities, because everyone deserves to die with integrity. Everyone deserves to die with dignity. And unfortunately, many evangelicals were behaving in a fashion that suggested very little generosity of spirit. They physically attacked Vodou temples. They physically killed or persecuted Vodouisans. And they certainly didn't want to have anything to do with the dead who could be regarded as Vodouisans. That was not the approach of Vodou devotees. They prayed for everyone. They held mass funerary services. What a different approach. And I think that this really comes from an Africana religious ethics of being, which is this philosophy. This is what I always tell my students: more is more. More is more in the sense that more spirits, more routes to the divine give you greater access to the realm of God. And so how could it be a problem that somebody recognizes God and Jesus and the Virgin Mary alongside Bawon Samzi, alongside Aida Wedu? That's the sort of Africana religious orientation that is not only not a problem, it provides you more access. And so I do think it's important that we lovingly hold our evangelical brothers, sisters, and siblings accountable for this type of devastation, for these types of accusations that led to more carnage after an environmental disaster that affected everyone.
And of course, even before the earthquake, Vodou were
That's right.
feeding the poor.
That's right. That's right.
Without strings.
That's right.
Without question, where evagelicals weren't doing that.
And without the state
Yeah, yeah.
doing it on their own.
I mean, every Sunday, pumpkin soup, right? Feed
That's
the poor.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was going to say one more thing. You know, you talk about the mirrors on the graves. It's interesting, and Bob Thompson, also from Yale, wrote about this. That even in the African American traditions, particularly in the South, the mirrors are turned inwards. They're mirrors, but the mirrors don't face out. The shining part of it faces inside, inward, on the graves themselves. So it's a very interesting how this tradition has been carried, and that you not only find it also in Haiti, but you also find it in African American tradition.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And it reminds me also of the work that those who were trained by Robert Farris Thompson, like Gray Gundraker, did on glass bottle trees. So for those of you who are familiar in the U.S. African American South, you'll see these bottle trees, these trees that have glass bottles on them. And it's the same concept that pieces of work that have the ability to reflect or refract light have the power to send messages to the other realm. So it's a really interesting, consistent pattern that you see in these sort of quote-unquote folkloric art traditions.
It's water-like.
It is very
Yeah.
water-like.
The mirror is just solid water.
That's right. And water was the first mirror.
Yeah.
Not so much a question as a comment. I'm just, you can ignore it or respond. In the North American imaginary, at least during the time I grew up, Haiti and Vodou were reduced to the figure of the zombie.
Oh, yes.
And
Still today.
And that's a word you never mentioned at all. And I'm grateful to see a representation of Haiti and Vodou that is so much richer and complicated and
Aye, Bobo.
interesting
Ay, Bobo.
than the zombie. So that's my comment.
Oh, thank you so much. How could I not respond to such a gracious affirmation? Thank you for that. And I have to say, the secret is I actually hate zombie studies. It actually really infuriates me. I think that the fixation on zombies in Haitian Vodou culture is really actually a European fixation. I don't think it's a real reflection of Haitian Vodou itself. It's not to suggest that zombies don't have a role to play in Haitian Vodou, but the prominence that it's given in the Western imaginary is really disproportionate to the role that it plays in Haitian Vodou. I'll say two very quick things about that. One is that I'm really convinced that Westerners' fixation on things like zombies and the zombie apocalypse, vampires, and ghosts and mummies is because white people have forgotten to care for their dead. I really think that's what it's about. Why is there such an obsession with all of these creatures that return from the dead? It's because once upon a time, Celtic Druids, once upon a time, the Vikings, once upon a time, the Greeks and the Romans honored and revered their dead. That's no longer happening. And so there's this deep yearning that a lot of white Westerners feel for relationships to the dead. And so they become fixated on things like zombies and, ghosts and goblins and things that can come back from the dead. Africana religious community members already have an existing relationship with the dead. So that's not a fixation. And the last thing I'll say is that one thing that I didn't mention in this talk, because clearly I was already over time, but also because it wasn't on the topic, is, The Princess and the Frog is such a great example of how bad Disney does with black people, right? Because Coco, for any of you who have not seen Coco, that's your homework. Please go see Coco. It's not perfect, but wow, what a powerful and respectful representation of Mexican Dia de los Muertos. It is a demonstration to me that these media production companies in Hollywood actually do know how to do respectful research and give dignity to traditions that have long been respected and revered. But The Princess and the Frog is far from that. And the original villain, who is known as Dr. Facilier, was originally going to be called Dr. Duvalier, which is horrible. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Duvalier is a really horrific dictator in Haitian history. He and his son both reigned for about 30 to 40 years. It would be the equivalent of naming a Disney character Hitler or Stalin. You would never do it. It's unthinkable. So fortunately, somebody was like, I don't think this is such a good idea. So they changed it to Dr. Facilier. But that's a film I always teach in my class on Africana religions, because I think it's an easy access point, especially for students, because they often saw it, and they saw it as children, and they remember the feelings that they have of seeing Dr. Facilier and being afraid. They remember those feelings. And so I say, okay, well, this is what he actually is. This is who Gede actually is. But that was the inspiration for that character. So I would add that. Thank you so much. I'm so glad somebody from this side is going to participate in the conversation. We've been left heavy. Please.
Yes, and I hesitate to ask the question following all these experts having asked the question, but I will
Not at
anyway.
all.
This was really fascinating, so thank you. The question I had was that I was a little bit surprised to see that in the first two historical periods, the art was more contemporary, but it was depicting these earlier periods. So my question, says the political scientist, is were the artists in any way trying to make a statement about contemporary times? Was there a metaphor? Was there any kind of signaling? Was it politicized in any way? Because I noticed that for the Revolution and the second period, the art was from, fairly recent decades.
That's a fantastic question. I'm so glad you did ask it. Thank you. And, what I would say is that Haiti has undergone so many different eras of political turbulence. There's always a moment to protest, to be honest, and one realm in which protest was sometimes able to be less detectable was through visual art, right? And so I think that the choice of artists in the 1990s of portraying the Haitian Revolution or portraying the anti-superstition campaigns was very much a cloaked and veiled discussion of, or provocation of, the fact that Vodou was experiencing great repression during the late 1980s. Duvalier had a very complicated relationship with Vodou. On the one hand, he studied it. He was a student of Haitian Vodou. He understood it to a certain extent and even manipulated it. He would dress as Baon Samedi. He would wear a black top hat. He would wear dark sunglasses. He would wear a very formal suit. But he did that in part to say, and he actually did say, I am the keeper of life and death for Haitians, right? And so Vodou has definitely been integrated in Haiti's political history since its inception. Whether evangelicals want to admit that is another question. I think that it is a fair statement to determine that many of the paintings from the past few decades that are depicting historical atrocities are an opportunity for people to talk about the atrocities as experienced today. I mean, it's really only in the past 20 years that Vodou has even been recognized as a national religion of the country. Same thing with Haitian Creole, which is a language, again, spoken by 100% of the population. So with those interventions, I do think that the arts play a sort of covert role, if you will, in intervening as they can. Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I was just discussing with Leslie the appearance of I think you identified him as a Muslim
Desi
Haitian.
Boukman.
And I'm wondering, what happened to the Muslim influences when it comes to Vodou? And an aside question is the appearance of the mirrors, because mirrors are very important in Middle Eastern art as well, coming from the Arab world and from Islam. So I'm wondering if there's any connection to the African use of mirrors as well.
I'll start with the second question first. I'm such a big fan of mirrors. I love mirrors. have written a lot about mirrors, and I'm fascinated by them because I actually think that they're universal. That's the thing. I don't think that they're only coming from certain regions. I didn't know that they played a large role in the Islamic world as well, but I do know that in certain traditions of Buddhism, for instance, a clean mirror represents a clean portrait of the soul. So if you allow a mirror to get dirty, it indicates a clouding of your psyche, a clouding of your soul. And so having a clean mirror, especially one facing like a statue of a Buddha, is very important as a signal and a representation of purity, not in the sense of something that has never been defiled, but in terms of sort of moral integrity, if you will. So I'll have to perhaps learn more from you about the use of mirrors in Muslim traditions. What I will say regarding the Muslim influence is that unfortunately there's very little work done on the, Dr. Daemung is like, I told you so. Yes, that's true. I mean, I can name Professor LaGrace Benson, who has written a really wonderful short piece, but very important piece about Muslim influences. What I would say is, I think that one of the reasons that we have less visible remnants of the Muslim influence in Haitian Vodou than certain other African diaspora traditions like Candomblé in Brazil is because of when Muslim Africans came. Muslim Africans came to Haiti on the much earlier side. We're talking almost as soon as enslavement began, Senegambians coming from Mali, coming from Senegal, coming from the Gambia in the early 1500s. And very shortly afterwards, you had larger percentages of Africans coming from Benin, coming from Togo, coming from Congo, especially towards the beginning of the Haitian Revolution. That's where the bulk of Africans were coming from. And so I think part of it is the distance of time, but remnants still exist. So Dati Boukman is referred to as Muslim in part because of his name. Man of the book became Boukman. So that's the understanding. So of course we know that one of the things that really allowed Muslim enslaved Africans to stand out in the African diaspora is the fact that a lot of them were literate. They knew how to read and write. Now, this was in Arabic, but still they knew how to read and write, which a lot of their, frankly, idiot plantation owners did not know how to do. They were largely an uneducated class, plantation owners. And so this made them powerful because the ability to read and write meant you could organize. And so many enslaved rebellions of the African diaspora were with involvement of Muslim Africans. That's very, very common that you see that in Brazil, you see that in the United States, and you see it in Haiti. And so the understanding is that Dati Boukman was perhaps not a Vaudouisan, but perhaps Muslim. Let me say two quick things there. One is that I have heard, and Alfred Mitro is one of the only people who has written about this, that there is a community in the north that I really want to visit that still maintains more of a connection to Haitian Vodou and Islam's influence there, and that fellows, devotees in that particular congregation pray to the east as if praying to Mecca. They don't eat pork. That's a big deal. If you're Haitian, you don't eat pork, you're really gonna stand out. Like, it's more common to be vegetarian and just say no meat at all than it is to not eat pork, because that is a sacred meat of the spirits. And there are some songs that still include references to either Arabic or to some recognition of an Islamic influence. I think that's quite powerful. So, you might hear an alhamdulillah, or you might hear mentions of Maritou, which is the nickname, the West African nickname for Mariam, coming from West Africa, which is Mary in Arabic. So some very interesting work needs to be done there, and I hope somebody does it. Thank you for that question. I'm so glad there's another question over on this side.
Thank you, Mambo. Just to kind of, just before I answer my question, I was shocked when I was spending time in Mardin, Turkey, and I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and she says, bobo, and I freaked out. I was like, what? She goes, oh, we mean kind of like, it's sort of an affirmation of, agreement. I was like, get out of here. That's what we do.
Wow.
I was so shocked.
That's
she's from Iran. So I was like,
note, pin
right.
it. More research later.
Right. My question is about the materials of the art and how with the type of materials that were used throughout time. I imagine materials are difficult to get, but also after the destruction, I wonder about the type of materials that was used to make these things, and if there's significance on the type of things that they had to get to make maybe the flags, or perhaps, because we know that there's different like wood art or metals or things like that, do you see particular types of materials that are used in these times that you have laid out for us?
Thank you for that question. I think I'm going to have to think about that a little bit more. But let me initially say that painting is such an old art form. I mean, I don't think I could give a time frame for it, but it's been around in Haitian history as long as, we can imagine. And from there, we can recognize that, materials might be the same, but the landscape might be different or vice versa. So for instance, you have examples of Taino rock paintings inside grottos and caves, which is a frequent site for Vodou ceremonies, particularly in the north and particularly for Maroons. So you would see, materials that were plant-based, so plant-based dyes, ochres, natural earth tones and pigments that would be used to create paint and things like this. Later on, you're seeing the introduction of foreign materials, foreign goods from, silk, textiles to different types of wood. So one of the things that's really interesting about Haiti is that it produces and historically produces the largest percentage of vetiver anywhere in the world. So if any of you are wearing perfume or cologne, it probably has vetiver in it. Haiti produces 83% of the world's production of vetiver, and it is required in the production of perfumes. Nobody knows this. I found this out like 3 or 4 years ago. Madagascar is the second largest producer of it. Haiti has a very long history of, interestingly, shipping its wood, especially mahogany, to places like the United States that were demanding for higher quantities of wood for furniture and things like this. So all of that is important because when people discuss Haiti as this deforested site. Oh, Haitians with their illiteracy and their silly and foolish ways and their uneducated ways, they're chopping down all the trees to make carbon for charcoal, to make fires, and they don't realize the devastation. Actually, the United States is largely responsible for the deforestation history in Haiti, and nobody talks about that. So I think that materials do have a lot of stories to tell. Today, flags take this new breath of fresh air with these hyper pigmented colors, these fluorescent colors, these neon colors that you wouldn't have seen 100 years ago, or even 50 or 20 years ago. And I think that brings a new quality of radiance to the work. And I also think that, in a country like Haiti, we really have to talk about the remarkable feat of creating this work in times of scarcity has to be underscored, right? Because, Juan Aledmon is a really good example. He will at times travel to the Dominican Republic for materials that he can't get in Haiti. That has happened before when bandits have stopped the truck and he's lost everything. I mean, to choose to continue creating reveals such an indomitable spirit. And there's a lot of problematic language like resiliency used as if Haitians don't also experience pain and trauma and vulnerability. So I'm not going to say that that's resilient, but I do think that that really demonstrates a commitment to the arts as a method of transformation and as a way of connecting with the spirit world that cannot be denied. So thank you. Please. Don't worry, it's still coming to you. It's for the people watching.
Oh, okay. I'll use the mic. You mentioned Taino paintings, and I know the Taino were pretty much completely exterminated. But did any Taino cultural elements make their way into voodoo?
Yes, and it's such an important absence in the literature. Maya Deren, who wrote, I think, one of the most marvelous books on Haitian voodoo in the 1950s, has an appendix. And the appendix is all about Taino influences. And, the book is now 70 years old. She gets some things wrong. But I don't really care because it's so valuable that she was doing this work in the 1950s and encouraging us to think about what are the indigenous American influences. We cannot pretend as if we arrived in this land either as Europeans or as Africans and, as if it was a tabula rasa. This is, land of indigenous peoples. So you do see some remnants of Taino influence and Arawak influence. One example is Cousin Zaka, who is the spirit who is known as Ministre Agriculture. I love this. We have a spirit who's known as the Minister of Agriculture. Isn't that fabulous? Speaking about political science perspectives. So he is not the earth itself. He is the guardian. He is the steward of the earth. That's an important distinction. And because of that, I think that a lot of people identify him as possibly having Taino roots, perhaps as a way of honoring those who came before. There are also what are known as thunderstones. So thunderstones play a really important role in a lot of West African traditions, particularly in Yoruba traditions. It's understood that there are these sacred rocks, these sacred stones that have the ability to sweat or to weep. I cannot tell you what the chemistry about this is, cannot tell you what the physics of this is, but I have seen people describe, for some reason, when heated, these stones emit water, little dewdrops of water. And that's either the stone weeping or sweating. And interestingly, Taino traditions have a similar legacy of sacred stones that were usually carved and that had these mystic powers, these mystic abilities. So people will show you stones and say, this is a Taino stone. Now, maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but it doesn't matter, because what's more important is the recognition that this is a legacy that has multiple lineages, one with an African lineage and one with an indigenous American lineage. I think a lot of the foodstuffs are actually a way that people recognize Taino legacies. So corn, maize, is from the Americas. Corn plays a huge role in Haitian cuisine, not only with cornmeal, but with things like chaca, which is a delightful, it's like a chili. It's not a chili, but it's like that in the sense that it's a bringing together of multiple beans and hominy and things like this. So you see foodstuffs playing an important role as well. And that really indicates that, you cannot understand Haitian Vodou. People who are thinking, oh, well, this is such a narrow topic. Well, actually, it's a prism, right? Haiti serves as a prism to understand like profound cultural influences and profound mixtures of identities, because you have to identify not only European Catholic traditions, but European Spiritist traditions. You have to understand West African indigenous traditions and African Islam and African Christianity. You have to understand indigenous Taino traditions. You also have to understand European traditions of Freemasonry, right? And so all of these different traditions have their own sort of orientation and play a role in Haitian Vodou. I mean, the Freemasons, talk about another topic that I really want to see somebody do more work on. I mean, all Haitian Ungan and Mambo, all Haitian priests and priestesses have a set of greetings that are Freemason greetings, right? There's representations and certain sacred symbols of the compass, the intersecting V like this, with a big G in the center, standing for Glamet, or standing for God, standing for the Grand Master. That's the literal translation of Glamet, which is one name for God. That's all Freemasonry stuff. And the first Freemasons in Haiti were there in I think the late 1600s. The first lodge established by Haitians themselves, I think, was in the 1700s. So you're talking about 300 years of Freemason traditions in Haiti, and men and women have been involved in that legacy. So really, Haiti to me serves as a prism to understand the wider world. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's give Kyrah one more round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for coming on this day of the eclipse, no less.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Now we can move our way over here for a wonderful reception.